Hi, my name is Dr. Richard Abbey. I show parents of children suffering from various disorders what to do so their children don't have to suffer anymore. Today, I'm going to show you how to ensure the happiness of your child, even without you there, by removing key barriers that impede your child's exponential success so that you don't have to worry about your child's future. I want you to look at the upper left picture. What if a struggling learner who hates school can turn into a child who loves school and loves the learning process? Or a child on the bottom left, 10 minutes of homework used to be a 2-hour battle. Imagine this child turning into a self-starter without prompting and getting all his homework done. Or to the upper right, think about a situation where a child used to have fun with parallel play, but now they're struggling with play dates, they're not getting invited, and transforming this child's life into being fully engaged and having fun once again with friends. Or to the bottom right, a child overcoming their obstacles and realizing their dreams because of the help that you provided. Today, I'm going to show you 4 strategies that will transform your suffering child's life so that you don't have to worry about them anymore. First, I'm going to show you how to turn worry about your child into peace of mind. The first step in the process is to know where you are. So maybe you're just getting started and you're watching your child in remote learning and you're just wondering what's happening. You never realized how much your child was struggling with focusing on the teacher, their head is down, or maybe in the learning process, you're finding that you have to provide your child with a lot more assistance than you ever knew that was needed for your child. Perhaps you've been at this for quite some time and you're starting to wonder if you are doing everything you can for your child. Maybe there's more and you're beginning to lose hope. Maybe you've been at this for a while and you're really starting to get concerned. What's going to happen to your child? Can they go to college? Can they be successful? What am I going to do? We've been at this for many, many years, helping hundreds of children. And our goal is to help you and provide you with the guidance you need to help your child be the most successful that they can be. Perhaps your child is struggling with focus and attention. And I've heard this story many, many times before where somebody says, well, my child doesn't have a problem with attention. And actually what they're talking about is they can focus on things like a video game or their favorite book. But what they're really struggling with is focusing on their homework. And how do they get that done? That is more of an attention regulation problem, and that's a true attention problem that most people aren't aware that even exists. And that's significant because you can actually do something about that and change your child's life. What if your child is having true difficulties with learning? Maybe they come across a word, you help them sound it out, and they come across that word again, and it's as though they've never seen it before, or they're skipping lines, or maybe they just aren't quite getting the math sense. Like they're coming up with these figures that have nothing to do with the problem, or they have no idea which formulas to use, and you're just really concerned about that. Maybe they're having difficulties with expressing their thoughts. All their ideas are up here, they talk to you, you can write it out for them, but there's something that happens in that writing process and it just doesn't seem to be translating from their mind to the paper. And how do you overcome that? We're going to talk about all these things and ways to really get deep inside and help your child in different ways. Perhaps your child is having difficulties with social difficulties and they really want to have friends, but maybe some of them moved away and they really don't have any anymore and you really don't know what to do, and they don't either. All these things can take their emotional toll. With COVID-19, children are suffering more than they've ever suffered before. They're isolated. Many children don't have a really good fit with the remote school learning and the hybrid. What are we going to do about this? Now I want to talk about how the current system does not provide real solutions. And I'm talking about not just the current system as it is during COVID, but just normally how it is. And so you've been in the pediatrician's office many times and you see this growth curve. And so normally we think about like height, weight, shoe size, all the things that go with it. But what I'm going to propose right now is what if we look at this in terms of your child's overall development? And so we can look at things like ability to focus and pay attention for things that aren't so interesting, kind of veering off the path. We're not keeping pace with other people same age, or even with our own abilities. So if we have a superior child, a child who's above average, their attention should also be above average. So we can look at these things, and how do we make those comparisons? Well, we actually measure them. We can look at social emotional development in the same way, and a child's learning, not just keeping up with the average range, but where are they? Where is the target? So we can look at these things and see how they're developing over time. Now, the problem is that our current system is a wait to fail approach, meaning that the gap has to be wide enough before anybody catches that. And rather, if we look at this as an early intervention approach, or provide the growth and guidance that we need for our children all along the way, that is a much better approach and a much better way to provide solutions. So the current system, unfortunately, is like yelling from a mountaintop, trying to talk to the neurons and all their connections. And while this has been not so bad of approach, going back as far as 60 plus years, it's about time we use current technology to help our young people actually develop in ways that would meet their potential. We no longer have to be and settle with the cards that we were dealt. We could actually change this through modern technology. I mean, we have supercomputers, we can send people to the moon. Why is it that we're so reluctant to help a little girl like this using modern technology to realize her exponential potential? Well, it's probably because nobody's actually told you about what's possible. We can't have little children like this suffering when we know what the solutions are. How do we know this? We've worked with hundreds of children. This is based on pure neuroscience over time. So you may be approaching this thinking, oh my gosh, this is like a complex chess game. What am I gonna do? What moves am I gonna make? Who's gonna help me? The school, the pediatrician, who's got the answers? Well, we've been doing this for many, many years. We know how to navigate. It does not have to be a chess game like this at all. It can actually turn out to be this amazing process that will help your child get exponentially better. And it doesn't mean staying up late. It doesn't mean teaching your child, hiring tutors with no end. These are real solutions that are going to get you real answers and is going to help your child get to the absolute next level. So let's talk about, how do we know this? Like, what does the neuroscience say? And you might be wondering why people haven't reviewed this with you. Well, I'm going to tell you about these things right now. The very common thing we see in children that have attention difficulties, when we kind of look at the brain, we see dysregulation in the frontal lobes. That's where attention regulation, executive functions. We've all heard about executive functions and how important they are for planning, organization. That's why there's this tremendous overlap between ADHD, executive functions, and abstract thinking. And so that's super important because we can actually use that information to help your child get better. Here is some research, and this is ongoing research, by the way, decades of research that shows us that poor readers don't develop the pathways. So this is showing underdevelopment of myelin sheathing, where that's white matter in the brain. Whereas good readers, you can see on the imaging, much better developed brain in terms of their nodes and networks. Super important, helpful information because we can actually use this as a way to help your child get better. I'm talking about reaching deep within, your own child reaching within their own resources and dialing those things up, just kind of like an equalizer or a dial. Like, how could they do that and get exponentially better? Well, we know, like, here's what good readers, they use this area like the word form area, the language centers. This goes back to Sally Shaywitz and, research by Sally and Bennett Shaywitz out of Yale and many, many others. And these are not as developed in poor readers. We know these are scientific facts over many, many research studies. Here's other findings that are very common in the neuroscience research literature, where depression shows us that there's excessive slowing in the frontal lobe. And anxiety shows us that within the parietal lobe areas, and other areas. There's racing of the mind, so excessive fast activity. We can actually see and image these things in the brain. Social communication, autism, these difficulties are very easily imaged, and typically what we see is underactivity in the sensory integration, the parietal areas that have a lot to do with social awareness. And so from a top-down approach, this is an okay approach. But what if we combine that with a bottom-up approach? Or what if we start there and we start putting those connections better? Well, guess what? We're on a mission, and we want to create a whole movement to end childhood suffering. It's needless. We've seen this time and time again, and our children that we work with get better. We want to provide that for you, and we want to provide that for children in the community. And in fact, our mission this year is to help over 200 families help their children overcome these difficulties, to erase those barriers so they can actually realize their amazing potential just by exercising and realizing what's already inside. This is for you if you believe in the exponential growth of your child. You want real solutions for now and for the future, and you're not looking for band-aids or quick fix types of things. You don't want to waste time and money on solutions with minimal results, but you want a proven process that we've been working on for over a decade. This all starts with a call to us. We set up an intake for you and learn about your concerns and the ways in which we can help you. And we'll get started through the assessment process and help you along the way. Now, where do we normally get checkups? We go to the pediatrician, right? The pediatrician gives us about 20, 30 minutes of their time. It's amazing. They're checking for the health, asking for various questions about how our children are developing and getting along in sleep and exercise and school. But they're kind of confined by managed care. They can only spend as much time as they get with our children, and they can't go in really great depth. So unless there's something pretty discrepant in terms of their overall development, they're just not going to catch that. The other area that's common for this to be seen or to kind of get an assessment is at school. Well, unfortunately, the current model, there's a few difficulties with that. One is, where is your child? So are they kind of nationally on the average curve? Are they above average? There's no way to tell unless you actually look. And schools just don't have time or the resources to do that breadth of assessments on all the children in the school. The other way they do this is with standardized testing. So again, they're not going to catch things that your child might need. And if they do, it's going to be in this really big gap. It's the wait to fail approach until there's this really big problem. That's really hard to catch. We are a group of neuropsychologists and psychologists, and we can actually do this in your home. When you call our number and after we do the initial intake, we can do an assessment in your home, which we can go and do a brief assessment or a comprehensive assessment, whatever fits you best. Perhaps you've already had one done. Maybe you just want to kind of dip into it a little bit to see where the interventions will take us, or we can go into the greatest depth. The more depth of information that we have, the better we can make our target. The child's room is clear of all distractions, and they go through this assessment that looks at things like learning, attention, executive functions, divided attention, and we can actually go into intellectual functioning, academic functioning, social emotional functioning, all in the comfort of your home. And we'll review those results with you, and we can come up with a plan of action on how to help you best. Now, the reason to do this is because every child is actually different. I love it. One parent said to me, you know, if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. Working at Stanford in various medical settings, working with thousands of children, I know this absolutely to be true. Your child's profile is unique, a unique set of strengths and weaknesses, and when we discover those things and we discover what they're good at, perhaps we can help them be good at other things too, so they can realize their potential and those barriers will be taken down. So this is an interesting concept where, you know, when you were pregnant with your child, you probably wouldn't have stopped at an assessment in terms of the very surface level. putting a stethoscope and seeing if the heart is beating, you actually would have probably done some imaging. And I'm sure you did that. So you want to see that the heart was beating, that your child was breathing, and they were doing okay. Well, you know, psychology and psychiatry is one of the few disciplines right now where they don't actually look at the brain or the organ that they're treating. But that would be so important. Can you imagine if you could look inside the brain, like this gentleman's brain, and you could, maybe the blue is, well, you're tired, and the yellows are, well, you're interested, and the reds, you're kind of, maybe you're irritated with something. What if we could look through transparently, right in through to somebody's brain and see how they were doing? That would change everything, because then it wouldn't be this hidden difficulty that we actually couldn't see. But I'm here to tell you that we can actually do this. We have the technology, things that we can send to your home. We've done this in the office, we've done this in many people's homes, and try to think of the brain as a computer. Now, one great analogy is the RAM of the computer is like working memory of the brain. So we all know that the RAM of the computer helps us run very complex programs. So if you have a computer with very little RAM, you can only do so much with a computer. And the same is true with working memory. The ability to hold information in mind and mentally manipulate it is actually the biggest predictor. It's the biggest predictor of academic success. So other aspects of the brain, like the motherboard that connects everything. The connectivity is what differentiates us actually from apes. Like, we're almost identical, but it's the connectivity and the myelin sheathing and all the things that we can do as an adaptive species. And we can actually learn and adapt, and we can do some amazing things. So we can actually look into the brain, and what we're looking at is the pulsing of the neurons. How fast are they going? And we can evaluate this and see, well, what does that mean? Where is that happening? And what is the significance of that? We're going to talk about why that's important. You can also, look at this, you can actually go in deep into the brain. This is a neuron, and here is the axon, and here's the communication here. And let's just say there's some kind of problem there. We can actually detect these problems currently with current technology. And why would that be important? It's important because we can actually do something about it. And then we can actually look at the speed of processing with all these different neurons and their communication. How fast is that going? Is it going too fast? Too fast would kind of be impulse control problems, or maybe it's anxiety. Or too slow, like, you know, maybe we haven't got enough sleep, maybe we're having trouble with focus and concentration. We can actually see these things within the brain by doing an in-depth analysis. So we look at the function of the brain, we look at the power or the frequency of the brain, we look at the connectivity, we look at the timing, we do an in-depth analysis of the activity of the brain. It's super important because if you just took a picture of the brain, like an MRI, it's not going to tell you anything. Now, there are other studies you could do, like an fMRI, functional magnetic resonance image, but you can only sample at 1 to 2 times a second. We need to sample in real time, like 128 times a second, or over 1,000 times a second. We can actually do that with non-invasive equipment that just has sensors on top of your child's head, and we can actually do analysis how the brain is functioning. The analogy might be like a busy highway system. If you wanted to see what the traffic was like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, an aerial photo wouldn't do it. You would have to have a movie. And just like that, we would need a movie of your child's brain, and we can actually do that. How do you get that process started? You simply give us a call and we set everything up. It's hard on us, easy on you. We're the ones managing all of the technology, and we set it up so it's just so simple for you to do. And we figured out how to do this. And guess how you do that? So we just send you this kit and a computer with FDA registered software on it with a cap, and then you can see there's this little box. That little box is a little amplifier that amplifies the signal of your child's brain. Now, we've set this up now so it's as though your child has a mirror to their brain. They can actually see for the first time how they're using their brain. And that's amazing and super important, because through that, your child can actually get a therapy. So we can actually, this would be a cap, an example of your child putting on the cap. And we don't leave you alone. You can see our assistant would be calling in, walking you through every step of the way. You just put the cap on and let us do the rest of the work. Your job is actually over and we do the rest. And so we're gonna do a brain analysis. We're gonna look at how your child's activity of the brain compares to the normative database. And by the way, this normative database is amazing because it was done with a multi-million-dollar grant with the National Institute of Health. And they looked at comprehensive neuropsychological assessments with that particular age. So let's say for like 8-year-olds, and they did brain maps. So everybody in the database was at least average or better, absent of any symptoms like anxiety, depression, or attention, or learning difficulties. And so we know what normal is supposed to look like. And so we're gonna look at those things and see how that turns out. So here is a real brain image from our office that shows a child with dyslexia. And you can see what this blue indicates is underconnectivity within these language areas. And you can see this child was really struggling, and it was very much correlated with a neuropsychological assessment that we did, having tremendous difficulties. Here is a prototypical image of a child with ADHD, and you can see this dysregulation, particularly in the frontal areas. This is imaging done right in-house with our own software, with our own equipment. And you can see this child is struggling in the frontal lobes where attention, regulation, planning, organization, all those things take place. Here is an example of anxiety. You can see now what this is showing is excessive fast activity, like our mind is racing and we're very worried about something. And so this is super important when we set up protocols for this particular individual. And here we go with social skill areas of weakness. And it's amazing. The amazing thing is we can actually see this, and it gets me so excited because if we can see it, we can train it. None of the imaging gives anything to your child other than it gives you information and opportunities. And it may seem hopeless. It may seem like, how are we gonna get through this? And we're gonna get through it together. We're gonna be your guide. We're gonna show you exactly how to do this. So now that we have the neuropsychological assessment, we know how your child is doing socially, emotionally, intellectually, academically, with their attention, learning, and memory. We know how your child's activity of the brain is correlated to that test data. We can come up with an action plan. We have over 30 plus interventions that we can offer to you, and we customize those things specifically for your child, so we can actually help you specifically for your child. How do you get started? Give us a call, give us an email. We'll set up an appointment and we'll get you started today. Now I want to talk to you about building confidence and resiliency in your child. And let's dig deep within their own resources and help them be the best that they can be, not with external things, but what they already have inside. And so the system that we've already sent you, this child has a cap on, has a computer all ready to go. Our assistant is logged into the child's computer, and this is neurofeedback. Okay, so if you've never seen it before, this is amazing. This right here, if you look at your screen and you see these things growing, that's actual brain activity. And so we can monitor this over time, and each time, each sample, 128 times a second, compare it to the FDA registered software that's precisely the age for your child, and make comparisons. Now, are they getting a little bit better or a little bit worse? Now, the brain will fluctuate over time. So we're just gonna capture this just a little bit over time. If it gets a little bit better and your child can hold that better activity for a quarter second, then they get a reward. In this case, the reward is this car moving. So you can see the needle right here. Every time the child does a little bit better brain activity, the car moves. The car moves instantaneously. At 1 millisecond, that reward is delivered. What is the reward? The car moving. So now we have this brain-computer interface, and it's specific to your child's areas of relative weakness that are far outside of normative average. Average being a mean of 0, a standard deviation being 68% of where most people are, 2 standard deviations being 98% of all people. And so if we're outside of that, if we're outside of the 98% of where all people are, and these have to do with your child's symptoms, we're going to train your child to actually get better over time. And so you see up here, this is the reward schedule. And so what we're seeing is that we got about a 40 to 50% reward schedule for your child to get better. And that's pretty tolerable for most individuals. And they actually love that reward schedule because they can do it most of the time. And I'm here to tell you, if people do this, they can use a brain-computer interface to learn how to use a robotic prosthetic arm, then your child can actually use this to get better socially, emotionally, academically, with their focus and attention. And so now they can realize their exponential potential. This is how it works. So let's say this is a neuron and here's an axon, and we have a problem right here. Now, we may be able to help your child overcome this problem, but look, there are billions of connections, and they could maybe use this one instead if this one, for whatever reason, isn't working very well. Well, how does that work? This is straight neuroplasticity. So if you have an axon that's poorly myelinated, and you exercise that neuron, in other words, you use this neuron and this axon to communicate over and over again, you will build this myelin sheathing, which is just made out of fatty tissue. You have oligodendrocytes out here, and if you use this pathway multiple times, your brain will start to lay down this foundation. It's like taking a road that's like the dirt pathway to grandma's house and making it a 5-lane highway. You need superhighways to focus and pay attention. This is just straight neuroplasticity. It's not specific to neurofeedback, but this is what happens. This is the magic behind neurofeedback, in that we can deliver rewards 3,000 times in one single session of only 25 minutes. And this is where you get that exponential growth. The other way, this is super exciting. See these little purple buttons? These are receptor sites. And these things floating around are neurotransmitters. And so they need enough receptor sites and actually to work with that particular neurotransmitter. And if you don't have enough, you can't use that neurotransmitter. But through neuroplasticity, you can actually grow more of these receptor sites. And when you do that, you utilize it better. So this is kind of building the architecture from within the brain, your own child's brain, and they're doing it. We're not telling them what to do. They're actually learning how to do this based on that feedback that they need, that have been identified in your child's brain through the brain maps. These are actual brain maps from our center. Here was that child with the dyslexia. Here's the after image, after doing neurofeedback, after doing some other therapies. This particular child increased their reading ability by 2 grade levels within 6 months. Amazing. Here's a child, and these are just typical results from our center, where there was underactivity in the frontal lobes, and now this child is completely regulated without medication, focus, attention, planning, organization, getting started, and sustaining his work over time. Really, really amazing results. Here is a child who had racing brain, anxiety, couldn't relax, couldn't sleep. Now they're calm and they have command over their brain, and their brain isn't taking them over and distracting them from the things that they need to be focused on. Here's the child's brain with social communication deficits. And through just getting the feedback, how to use your brain in a better way, the child has actually gotten exponentially better, is engaged with other children. You're going so high, look at that, whoa. Here's just an example of identifying something that your child is already doing. All I did was say, hey, look, you're going over these bumps. Isn't that amazing? Look at you. Did you hear him yelling and screaming? No, you couldn't hear exactly what he said, but he was super excited. I encourage you to find your child doing something right, identify it, label it, praise them for doing that. You'll be amazed at what happens. So these are things that you can do just every day. And so what happens next? So now that we built the foundation of the brain, the neurons are connected, the neurons are firing at an appropriate rate. What do we do next? Well, you make contact with us again, and what we're gonna do is set up neuropsychological training. So we've gone to the deepest level, the level of the neuron and the level of their connections. And now we're going to go up a level and train things like attention, learning, memory, working memory, executive functions, all the things that underlie this higher level of functioning, like social communication or academics and learning. And we can actually train those things, and people have been doing this for decades. And so how do we do that? We send you the information. We're going to have a clear, nice, quiet area again, and we're going to do some fun, amazing activities. So this is an example of some of the activities that takes place. And what's super fun about these things is it not only applies academically, but your child can actually get better at sports. Of course they can. Focus is so important in sports. Look at Stephen Curry. He's the epitome of this. Who does the brain training? Stephen Curry. The Olympic team, the Canadian women's hockey team, won the Olympics. Guess what? They did brain training. Carrie Walsh does brain training. So many Olympians do this. Academics do this. And it's an amazing thing because you can actually have fun, and our trainers are going to walk your child through every step and be with them as partners and help them get better in so many ways. Here's another exciting intervention in the neurocognitive skills level where we use virtual reality. So your child, they're having fun playing virtual reality, and in fact, they're doing amazing brain exercises, and we can adjust each one of the lens, and we can do things like working memory or attention exercises. We can do eye tracking exercises or eye teaming exercises. And all the while, your child is having a lot of fun, and they're actually doing some things that are going to train their brain to make them better so they can actually realize their potential and get rid of those barriers that were keeping them from realizing their dreams. We can actually monitor everything from a live perspective and walk you and your child through it every step of the way. Now we're going to talk about how your child can be the best version of themselves. Take a look at this video.
What are you working on there? Oh, you're putting together, something pretty cool. Looks like you're working real hard. I like how you're focusing, and you are just going at it, aren't you? Look at those go right there. I see you've been hard at work building that big train station.
This is already finished.
That's already finished?
This is already finished.
Wow, will you show it to me? Who are all those little people there?
This is Lupin, this is Ron, this is Harry, this is my trolley, this is me, and this is Red.
Red?
The three-tailed wolf, or a blood tooth, or a
Wow.
snowy crab.
That's very creative, Christopher.
Thanks.
So we can see just by spending a little time and focusing on what our children have created can go a very long way in building their confidence and helping them feel so much better about what they're doing. And we want to be there every step of the way for our children and provide all they can so they can succeed and realize their dreams. And we want to provide that support. And it's amazing when this can happen. The things that start coming out, I've talked to parents and they said, for the first time I've seen my child, I knew it was in there. And to see children celebrate in this way and parents celebrate in this way is why I get up every day in the morning, and what makes me so excited. And my team, I have a whole team of professionals that are just so committed to making this happen for you and your child and being your guide so you can help your child be happy and realize their dreams and just really help everything that you know your child can do, that you know is deep inside them, can help them. And here's just an example of the celebrations that we should be having and the good times we should be having when children overcome things like dyslexia. It's an amazing thing. It's something that provides them with compound interest, because now instead of learning to read, they're reading to learn, and they're just building up this amazing information. And these are things that are impossible. I mean, our jaws should be dropping on the ground. What are possible today, to be living in today's era of medicine. A big part of this is people just don't even know this exists. We've been doing this for multiple years, helping people do this. And these are some of the examples of the expressions of people's faces. Like, literally, Aunt Sally's gonna be blown away. Uncle Joe's gonna be like, hey, what's happening? And even the baby's gonna be like, this is impossible. And the cat's gonna be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Just give us a call. It can be so much fun, and it can be an amazing process. And it's really just about helping your child. We're gonna be your guide and providing this for your child so they can just reach deep inside the things that are already inside them and become this amazing person you know that they can be. And I'm sure they are already amazing. But what if they could tap into abilities that they already have? What about that focus that they have on video games could be generalized to something like their math or their other homework? Or these amazing abilities that they have in sports, what if that was similar to like their social communication or their calmness in other aspects of their life? This can happen. We've seen it every day.